Okay, so I want to talk about something now that's probably going to be a little bit controversial, not universally popular here on YouTube, because I know there are quite a lot of hardline Brexiteers around, and I'm quite certain for a lot of those that Gina Miller is not somebody who features particularly high on their Christmas card list. It has to be said. But I want to propose to those people and to everybody else who's from the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland that we all owe Gina Miller a debt of gratitude today or over the last couple of days. And if you don't agree with me, well, at least hear me out, hear what I have to say. Let me just fill you in on the background if you're not aware of what happened. 2 days ago, the Supreme Court voted 8 votes to 3 that the British government could not unilaterally trigger Article 50 of the Treaty of Lisbon, and that they would have to consult Parliament, that Parliament would get to vote on it, and that they would have to vote before that could be triggered. And that is as a result of the action, solely as a result of the action of Gina Miller. Had Gina Miller not taken the action that she did, the government would just have triggered Article 50 when it wished to, probably in March. And why do we owe Gina Miller a debt of gratitude? Well, look, when Gina Miller started her legal action, some of the papers tore into her and the fact that she was starting this action. I thought it was totally over the top what they said, but nevertheless, my eyes rolled a little bit at the fact that we're going down that path. And I have to say that I was wrong with regard to that. This is my chance to kind of set that straight. I never made a video at the time, but I could have done. And I was wrong. And I was a little bit naive, really, and I shouldn't have been, especially given that it was only, I don't know, about 12, 18 months ago that I made a video, A Case for the British Monarchy, discussing some of the checks and balances that we have within our democracy. So I should have been more than aware of the necessity for these kinds of things. And this is what the issue is about. If you want to have a democracy and a stable democracy, you need to have some checks and balances on that democracy. Now, some people, if you talk to somebody from the United States, they'll wave their constitution in front of your face, and the checks and balances that brings. In the United Kingdom, the checks and balances that we have are substantially different to those. Some of those are tied up in our heads, in our head of state, and the checks and balances that the monarchy brings. Others are tied up in the way that our parliament functions, and some of those are set down in legislation, but they're not encoded in a specific constitution. It's just legislation, the same as every other piece of primary legislation, and it can be overturned in the same way that any other piece of primary legislation can be overturned. And a lot of what forms our unwritten constitution is custom and practice and precedent, and it's very, very easy to overturn some of those things. And that is why this was critically important, because what was going to happen was that the UK government was simply going to enact Article 50 without consulting Parliament and without Parliament voting on it. And we now know, as a result of the Supreme Court deliberating on this, that that would have been wrong, that that would actually have been unconstitutional. But notwithstanding that, if that had actually happened in 10 years' time, in 20 years' time, in 50 years' time, in 100 years' time, in 200 years' time, because we do look back that far to take our cues, our constitutional cues. If something similar had cropped up, we would have looked back to what had happened or what will be happening over the next couple of months, and it would have been said, well, the government didn't have to consult Parliament on that occasion, so they don't have to consult Parliament on this occasion, and so one of our constitutional checks and balances would have been eroded. As a result of the actions of Gina Miller, and it's pretty much Gina Miller alone, it seems, that we have to thank for this, because if she hadn't took this action, it doesn't look like anybody else was particularly keen to pick up the cudgel, right? As a result of Gina Miller's action, now if somebody looks back in 50 years, 100 years, 200 years' time, actually we've reinforced the point that Parliament does need to be consulted in these things, and that is all something that makes our democracy a little bit safer. Now, I am pleased, even though I was a Remainer, I am pleased that the majority of MPs, it would seem, will abide by the will of the British public and will vote in favour of the bill, because I'm quite pleased that the Supreme Court decided that the devolved assemblies will not have to go through a ratification process as well, because I'm quite certain that it is in our interest, if we're going to go ahead with this, and of course we are, right, that the best way to do it is to crack on with the process and get through it as quick as we can, not rush it. Trade deals and all these disentangling ourselves from the European Union will take a period of time. It's a tremendously complicated thing to do, but let's not drag it out longer than we have to, and that applies of course to the House of Lords and it passing through the House of Lords as well. But notwithstanding that, I propose to you that today we owe Gina Miller a debt of gratitude, a constitutional debt of gratitude. I was wrong about Gina Miller when she started her action, and I propose that the papers were wrong and quite a lot of people were wrong. Thank you for that, Gina Miller. That's all I wanted to say. Bye for now.